Good evening. It is Poultry Keepers 360 Live with Flock Talk. And guys, tonight we've got a new format for our show. We're going to talk about uh, hot tips, or not hot tips, tips and tricks, hot topics, and questions and answers. So, with that said, Jeff, what's a good tip tonight to share with our viewers?
Just today, well, last night into today, I had a fellow reach out to me out in Oklahoma, and he said, "Man, my first two hatches were 90%, and then my third hatch went to 50%. Same birds." He goes, "Everybody looks healthy, everybody looks normal, and I start checking off things in my brain what it could be. I said,
Mm-hmm.
"Well," I said, "it really sounds to me like you got an old bag of feed from the feed store, right?" And I said, "Unless your water's changed or, there's been some new environmental stress put on the bird, so there's no reason for that unless if you've got a really old bag of feed off the shelf at the co-op, those vitamins are all oxidized off." And he scratched his head and thought about it for a minute. He goes, "I'll bet that's what it was." He said, "I was at the co-op and they said, 'Hey, you're lucky you got the last two bags.'" Well,
Oh,
you
gosh.
never. Okay, look. I grew up, servicing people in a small hometown feed mill, right? As a kid, and I can tell you, inventory does not get rotated correctly. So, reading the dates on those lot numbers can be really, really important. More so now that we're in breeding season. So,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
that's I think he was setting 170 eggs at a time. Um, so he just lost 40% of that. That's a fair amount of eggs.
Yeah, that's a
So
lot of potential chicks.
that's a lot of potential chicks. I don't. He didn't say what he was doing with them. I don't know if he sells or if it's his own personal, but if it was his own personal use or what. But yeah, no, that's a big one. I mean, it is breeding season for a lot of folks out there. Some have already been doing it for a month or more. I get
Yes.
it, but still, we're kind of in the heart of breeding season for most of the country. Um, Now's the time to be ready.
And Jeff, I was thinking the other day, we talk about trying to do shows that are calendar wise, everybody's dealing with. But
Hmm.
it's hard when the U.S. is so big and we talk about other foreign countries and what's springtime here is fall there. And then we just do the best we can, folks. So,
Yeah, yeah. We can't hit all the countries at the same time. That's
no.
why everything's recorded. You can go back on YouTube and look at any one of them. But yeah, it's there's no way we're going to hit every region of the world, at the right time. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And folks, I do want to apologize for that little mix up we had on StreamYard and getting this thing scheduled. Um, I got it corrected, but they changed something, and I didn't know they changed it. But so from now on, we're just going to send you a link to the live stream on YouTube. All you have to do is click the link, and bam, it'll take you right to this show. So, one of the things we were talking about is hot topics. And I went back and I had been noticing it, but I just wanted to be sure that I was picking up on it right. And one of the topics that I see recurring over and over and over, particularly this time of year, is people don't get good fertility from their males in the springtime. And Jeff, I know you've got some insight on that. I've got some thoughts on it, but I'll let you kick it off.
Well, I mean, my biggest concern is, we're keeping cocks for a long time. Once you get that, near perfect, rooster, you want to get as many miles out of him as you can, and we all understand that. But if he's carrying extra weight, um, and he needs that. That's going to be one thing. If he's got a bunch of extra fat in there laying around those testicles, he's not going to reproduce right. Rip, you've said it in the past. Ramping up their lights. But the hardest thing that I've tried to help people with is having them separated for 45 to 60 days
Yes.
prior to breeding season. Okay, getting your males somewhere else, right? Because
Yep.
if he lives with that female continually, his interest level is not the same as when you first reintroduce them. But those are the thoughts that I've got as far as, you know,
And Jeff, I agree with you 110%. And uh, it's when we try to diagnose people's problems. Sometimes I'm going to get on my soapbox here a little bit, but when you send us a question, make sure you send us all the background information about what can be going on, because it can be so easy to say, I've got this, and this, and that really doesn't help us diagnose what's going on so we can give you the best possible answer. Um,
what, Rip, you don't wait. I
oh,
thought you had a crystal ball like me, right? People send me a message. Hey, my rooster died this morning. What do you think happened? How old is he? What are you
yeah.
feeding them? You got a predator problem? I mean, there's so many questions that I can ask, and that it's going to lead. It's that old game of 20 questions, right?
Hmm.
You've probably played it. I've played it, right? So, give me 20 questions and let me see if I can figure it out. Well, you got to give us more to go on than that, right?
Yeah. Give us as much information as you probably can. And before you hit send, add about 30% more information to it. Because, like I said,
Yeah.
the more we know, the more we can help you.
Now, I can tell you that Rip doesn't mind reading like paragraph style, large body text.
I
I
know where
can
this is
tell you
going.
if you send it to Jeff, put it in outline or bullet form, keep it brief. Okay. The more you put on a piece of paper, the slower it is for me to respond to you. I'm just telling you right now. Okay. Just get to the point. Tell me what I got to know. Breed, age, what are you feeding them, how you housing them, right?
Hmm.
Um, Things like that. So, uh,
Jeff, we got a couple of questions coming in that pertain to
yeah.
this.
And there's one about the roosters. Yeah. So
Yeah.
look,
Um,
I got people with 10-year-old roosters still viable,
oh,
right?
sure. I've
Okay.
had that.
The longest I've heard is 12, but 10 is really good. The longest breeding rooster with fertility, with good fertility that I've heard is 12, right? But if you don't manage them right and they get fat, you're lucky to get 5 or 6 years out of them.
Yep.
So
So, yeah, right here, I can't read the name.
that's the one I just put up. How long should a
Oh,
rooster be productive?
I didn't see you had it up there. My
Yeah,
bad. I was looking through
that's
the
all
rest
right.
of them.
That's all right. I don't know the answer to this one. Does auto-sexing come from the hen or the rooster?
It depends on what kind of auto sexing it is. Um, if you're going for down color, and I'll just pull this one out of the hat right off the top of my head. If you want auto sexing, cross a barred male, or if you cross a barred male with a solid color female or Rhode Island red or something like that, all the chicks will be barred. Okay. But if you reverse that and you use barred females bred to a Rhode Island red rooster, you'll get barred males only. That's a sex link barring.
Really?
Yep. If you want red sex links, everybody's familiar with red sex links, I bet you. Those are auto sexing by down color, and it goes back. to the red silver gene interactions and how that works. But if you use red males mated to white or silver females, sometimes like Delaware is a good example. You could mate a Rhode Island red to Delaware. All the female chicks will be red. All the male chicks will be white.
All right, so this is Frog Feeder's follow up to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can't pronounce it, so I'm gonna let you do it, right? So,
Now, I want to improve my Creole Penidicincus, and I think I got to use a well summer to cross into. That cross should work, but you're gonna have to fight. Um, you're gonna have to do some pretty strict culling to maintain the proper type. But yeah, that cross would work for you.
you mean to maintain the right body type,
Yeah,
or what?
to,
Okay,
to
which
maintain the
type are you
colors.
talking?
I'm
Okay,
assuming he's talking about he wants to change or make sure he doesn't lose the Creole color. But Creole is one of those colors that over time, Creole to Creole to Creole to Creole mating, they kind of bleach out on you a little bit and it becomes harder to see. So every now and then you've got to use Penidicincus is based on a black breasted red color pattern. And so you've got to use another black breasted red male to mate into that. Now, if you can find a black breasted red Pendidicinca, then you're pretty much home free at that point. You're going to keep your type and you can improve your color with them.
okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar with the Penodicica, so that's why.
It's from, if I remember correctly, it's from Spain, and it's one of those dark egg layer breeds. They imported a bunch of them at one point, but they never really caught on big because they are flighty in all capital letters. Um, they're 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 a little bit nutso birds to me, but
Look, you know why there's so many different chicken breeds? Because there's that many different kinds of people that want this, that, and the other thing,
oh yeah,
right? So
absolutely,
that's you just find what makes you happy.
that's right.
All right. So, what's an advisable best practice for turkeys as well to house the toms separate through the winter? I mean, you definitely for turkeys you 100% want to separate them, um, and they're not going to commingle well. Especially now with turkeys, it's actually even important the further you can get them apart because turkeys being able to hear the hens, gobblers, toms being able to hear the hens can still cause quite a bit of aggression. So I think you're going to probably have to keep them, the tom's going to have to be in separate pens for sure. And you didn't say which breed you had, but that's just their natural instinct. If there's a hen in the house, um, it's a good enough reason for them to fight each other. And they can be pretty brutal.
Absolutely. And if you stop and think about it, wild turkeys, they segregate by sexes
They
until
do.
breeding season. Yeah. Males and the females don't start wheeling and dealing together until the breeding season comes on.
Well, now in turkey, with the wild turkeys that I'm as a hunter, right? When I was out there looking,
Hmm. Hmm.
I would see the young males running in a group,
Yeah.
but I
Young of
didn't.
the year males. Yeah. Young of the year
Right,
male.
but I didn't see mature males running as a group. They'll be separate, but I never saw them as a group, like three, four, five, six of them, running together. Not up here. So, um,
A group of old male turkeys here is probably two or three.
okay,
Uh, not, I didn't make myself very clear when I said a group, but yeah, it's not. a whole wad of turkeys.
But in nature, once breeding season's over, they separate. The
Hmm.
males go one direction, and the females go off with their young, right? And there'll be a group of females after they've hatched and they get to a certain age. They'll come back together as a flock. The females will, but the males still continue to be separate until about this time of year they start looking a little bit for the hens. But mating season in the wild for us is April, May, late April, early May. About the time, and that's back to the lighting thing. That's about back to when we get close to that 13 to 14 hours of light, right?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
I mean, the amount of light is what drives them to their instinctual reproduction period. Okay, so if you want to breed off season or out of the normal season, then um, especially like turkeys, you're going to have to ramp them up, gradually. You have to gradually bring those lights up to fool them into thinking it's springtime and get their hormones moving to even want to think about mating or laying eggs. So, anything to add to that, Rick?
No, that's right on the money there, Chief. Um, Wild turkeys and domesticated turkeys are not that far apart in some of their behaviors and
They,
mannerisms and mating.
they still carry a lot of that natural instinct. I'm
Yes.
amazed when I go to, when I see a flock of turkeys being kept on the farm.
Hmm.
I'm still pretty amazed at the amount of instinct that is retained in turkeys. Even the bourbon reds and the blue slates and the Narragansetts and things like that. Now, not so much in the commercial, when you start talking about the Nicholas or the butt or the big,
Yeah.
broad breasteds. There's still a fair amount of instinct there. Don't get me wrong, but
Right.
it's not nearly as much as
I
the standard bred birds.
exactly.
Yeah.
And it's funny you were talking about bourbon reds and the blues and royal palms. I've I've told this story before, but some of them may not have heard it. But back when I was working for the game commission in the good old days, I was up at our wildlife research lab in Gainesville one time to drop off a roadkill bear for them to necropsy, and I just happened to bump into our turkey biologist, and I said, "What's new?" And he said, "Well, I'm just going through a bunch of study skins." And he had drawer after drawer after drawer after drawer of turkey skins in there. And he pulled open one drawer, and there was the most beautiful bourbon red, a beautiful blue slate, and a beautiful royal palm. I said, "Did those get crossed up with the domestic birds?" He said, "No, these are 100% wild birds." So that's where they got some of those color patterns from, is a natural mutation out in the wild.
Really?
Yep.
Huh. Those were all wild birds.
Yep. Everyone. And I said, "Are you sure?" He said, "We ran DNA testing on them." I said, "Okay."
Like they had nothing better to do, right? So,
Absolutely.
so Frog Feeder said the main question would be how do I go about improving my Creole and my partridge
And
Panadisecus?
yep. For me and frog feeder, I'm not going to be able to get into a lot of detail here on the show tonight. But if you will message me privately, send me a private message. I'm on Facebook. Then I can work with you and to go through this thing. But what it boils down to, your key to those colors is to have really good partridge Pinnatisecas, because that will help keep the color in your creels and improve that. The creels will give you the barring gene that you need. You can take a Creole Pinnatisecka male and mate him to the partridge Pinnatisecka females, and you'll get a goodly percentage of Creole Pinnatiseckas. So That's it in a nutshell. The better the color on the partridge, the better the color on your creel is going to be. Um, but here again, it's one of those colors that's kind of hard to work with. Um, I think I may have some resources I can refer you to or send you, but reach out to me and we'll see what we can get stirred up. Um, as you may or may not know, my wife's not doing the best right now, so I'm tied up with her and get kind of busy sometimes. So if I don't get right back to you, just bear with me. I haven't forgotten about you, but I will get back to you.
So, since that name or that breed is different for me, is there many other breeders? Do you see them at all the shows? I mean, are they prevalent?
I have never seen one in a show.
Okay. I
They're
mean,
pretty uncommon birds.
is it a is it a is there a standard for it? I mean, is there um
I believe the Pinta de Cinco group has a working standard that they're going by, but they're not an accepted breed by the APA.
okay. All right.
And
Yeah, I was
they,
gonna say that's new one for me.
at one time, I think they were working on it, but whatever happened to that process, I don't know, and maybe it's still ongoing because that takes quite a while to get one accepted by the APA.
All right, so Sue, don't keep us hanging. What happened to Big Earl? I mean, two thorough exams to figure it out. So tell us the secret. Best advice for sanitizing, sterilizing a space for your next round of birds. He's bringing in some new stock. I want to make sure that I properly prepare the space. Sorry, is bringing in new, properly prepare the space for him. I don't know what kind of pen design you have. I don't, I'm going to make assumptions that you're going to put them on the ground and you're going to use some type of bedding. So, the best advice I can give you is, clean out as much of the old residual bedding in that pen as you can. Um, and I'm a big fan of putting down, high calcium yard line, right? Um, you can get it at most Tractor Supplies. I believe the brand name is Wasika, Wauseeka, I think. Um, but put it down like you had a light snow or a really heavy frost. Make it good and white. So I would actually rake that the dirt under it just a little bit, loosen it up. I would lime it really heavily, maybe even rake it again and put another coat of lime on there. But then all of your fixed structures, like your wood, your wire, things like that, um, actually a good bleach solution works really well as your first defense. My mentor taught me to use a phenol-based disinfectant like Pine Sol, because it sticks better, right? It has more of a long-lasting residual effect, and so it's going to give you a longer period of. And then put down some fresh bedding. What did I miss there, Rip?
I think that's pretty good advice. I too grew up using the phenol based products, um, and if you follow the directions and do what they say, it works great. So
Yeah,
I
he was a big fan of the phenol-based, right? Just because of that pine tar, sticking to it. The orange oil, if you could afford it, right, is
do.
also. I mean, orange oil is an excellent disinfectant, but it ain't cheap. So the oil that's in citrus is called D-limonene, and D-limonene is a phenomenal disinfectant product. But
I tell you what else it'll get too, and that's fire ants.
yeah, yeah. So there's several insecticides that have come out with it, or things for treating insects. Come to find out, the oil in the orange actually melts the waxy skin or the waxy surface of the ant or any other insect, right? It clogs the pores because they breathe exoskeleton. They don't breathe like us, and it suffocates them. It it works really good.
Yeah. I want to jump back to something Frog
Okay.
Peter said here. He's kind of corrected me on that. Um,
Oh,
oops.
hold on, let me get rid of it. There you go.
O-
Sorry.
Okay. Uh, he said he disagrees with me with the flightiness of Pentadisincas. And Frog Peter, I'm basing what I knew on Pentadisincas on 15 plus years back because I just haven't seen any since then. So I wouldn't doubt a bit in the world that somebody has spent a good bit of time selectively culling for the better temperament birds. But those first birds that came over here, they were pretty wild. So I appreciate you feeding us that information, man.
What did we skip over?
Um,
Oh yeah, the turkey question was blue slates.
yeah.
So
Um,
yeah, but yeah, I
here,
all of the standard breeds like the blue slate, um, getting those males separated, but still they're going to have a level of aggression. Now, immature males will not, right? Like we were talking about
yeah,
earlier. You
yeah,
you can keep juvenile males, but if you're keeping an older male, um, you're going to have to keep him separate. The other thing is this gives you, if you do that, you know, 30, 45, even 60-day separation, this gives you time to control the amount of feed that bird's getting and get their fat under control, right? Get them down, get them lean, not starve them to death, but you can work them back down to where they should be for a mature bird, right?
Sue Dobson had a question here. If I can find it, I started it now. You get old and you get forgetful. Here we go. Will lime tilled into the pen help decrease lice?
Should. Um, it's not, it's more for the bacteria and viruses and fungi. It's more for the microorganisms than it is. Now, the lice are not going to like it either. So the lime is a desiccant and it's going to draw moisture out of pretty much anything living in that pen. So there's going to be some positive effects to liming it. If I was doing lice, I probably would work in some diatomaceous earth, and that would do better because that'll get in the segments of the body of the lice, um, and lacerate them, make it a really uncomfortable place. Or, two, the other thing I would do is sulfur, right? Which we talk about adding to the feed. You could go in there pretty heavily with some powdered sulfur. Please wear your respirator and your goggles, okay,
Yes.
and your gloves. Um, just because you're going to make it dusty in there, I don't need you breathing a whole bunch of sulfur. But sulfur is actually going to be your best defense against insects like lice. So, and you can get it everywhere and anywhere, right? Because they like to live in the wood, on the roost poles, all kinds of places. So they're just tough to get a hold, get under control.
Yeah. And the best place to pick up sulfur is the big box stores like Lowe's and Home Depot in the garden center.
Hmm. You can get 5 pounders there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Sue lives too far. I'd bring her 50-pound bags, but yeah, you can. They are available in 50-pound bags. It's just really hard to get them.
Yeah.
So
Let's see what we got here.
Yeah, would tilling the run help? Absolutely. If you have that ability to go in there with like a small tiller, your hens are not going to think it's all that enjoyable at first. But yeah, so the process there would be lime it, till it, lime it, and you can actually till it again. Um, but every time you put air into the soil, you make it healthier. You lower your bacteria, fungi load, and virus load. Um, Makes it easier for plants to grow. So if you want to reseed it, that'll be extremely helpful as well. But loosens it up. It gives it a place for moisture to go. So it won't be holding a lot of water. Yeah, if that's an option for you, tilling the run is a great idea. So
Um, we had a question here pop up. You you mentioned feed. I am now rationing the birds at 4 ounces per bird per day. What do you recommend for turkeys?
that's actually, I mean, so depending on what food, if you want to share a label of the tag, you can message it to me or email it to me, um, and I'll take a look at I can read between the lines on the ingredients to try and figure out what the energy level of that feed is. So if it's a feed formula that I put together, 2.5 to 3 ounces of feed per bird for even a large fowl chicken is plenty. And Rip shaking his head, yeah, because he's been there, done that.
Yep.
So the turkeys are going to be 5 to 6 ounces depending on that feed. But I really need to see, or I need to know what kind of feed it is. What's the brand, what's the guaranteed analysis, what's the ingredient list. Then I can give you a better estimate. I mean, if it's a really good, wholesome feed without a lot of byproducts and fillers in it, probably 4 to 5 ounces for the turkeys is plenty. Um, but understand that instinctual turkeys will start to store, um, they're going to store fat on declining daylight, right? At the end of the year, when the days go below 12 hours, sometime in September, depending on where you live, um, they're going to store fat. That's what their instinct tells them to do. So somehow we need to get that to come off, prior to mating season. So, the more fit, the less fat your toms and hens are, the more productive they're going to be. So, um, but yeah, I'm happy to take a look at the feed, try and read between the lines, and give you some guidance on that. Not
Okay.
all feeds are created equal.
Amen to that, brother.
Again, Rip learned that well, not the hard way, but
No,
Rip learned
but
that.
I learned it. That's the important thing. So
Yeah.
I learned. Got a question here from Green River Acres.
Uh-huh.
Rip, do you happen to know anything about why Buff Americana are so difficult to breed? I have seen some casual mention of that. No serious, really big discussions. I know a couple of people that I can get to go in, and I'm sure they can offer some much better insight than I. So if you will send me a PM so I don't forget it, I'll see what I can dig up for you. But I saw something just the other day. I don't think it has anything specifically to do with the buff color because I've raised buff rocks and buff cochins and a lot of different breeds in buff color, and I never really had a problem with fertility that I thought was traceable back to the color itself. I never saw the color as a commonality in poor fertility.
I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't know why color would really make any difference. But the few Americanas that I had here, um, just wouldn't squat for the rooster, right? The hen would not. She would not. position for the rooster, and I have no idea why. So I do think that the Americana breed is a little fussier. They don't necessarily like our plan for mating as much as picking their own plan for mating. So, that's where running them in a flock, um, you almost probably have to let the hen pick the rooster that she's interested in, which is really difficult to do.
I
But
know a lot of people do that with Aracanas, which is one of the breeds that went into creating Americanas,
mhm,
so that I wouldn't doubt that there's some sort of tie in there.
they're pretty fussy about it.
Yeah.
So that's just what I observed, right? And the whole purpose of me having chickens in my backyard was an observation group, to try and better understand why chickens do what they do.
And Kelly Gear chimed in here, said color has nothing to do with performance. That's kind of where I'm at too, Kerry. But
I I've never seen it make a difference. I think it's more the hen being fussy, whether or not she likes the rooster or not. So
yeah,
that's where I would go with that.
it would be interesting to see if it would be a good little project to cross buff with another color and see if you get the same results, just for grins and giggles.
Yeah. Ingrid had a question. What makes poultry susceptible? Well, okay,
Nope.
there we go. Yeah. What makes poultry susceptible to mites and lice? She's noticed that dogs that are fed raw meat diets are less susceptible to fleas, for example. Are all things are there things that can be done with the ration? And yes, you're right, Ingrid. So um, chickens, very much like a dog, tend to be a lot more carnivorous than people, want to believe, right? So their preference would go to insects, small reptiles, amphibians, things like that. Is really what they're after, more so than finding, grains and so on. So, and it's not just dogs and it's not just chickens, but I've noticed also in human beings that people with a higher carb and sugar diet tend to get fed on more by mosquitoes and things like that. So there's something about the carbohydrates, the blood sugar level, that seems to be more of an attractant for insects to feed. And I don't have all the pieces of the puzzle, but yes, in a poultry diet, if we could feed more meat, protein, they should be much less susceptible to to external parasites.
That's an interesting observation, and honestly, I had not heard that before. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, yeah. Whenever I'm in a crowd with a bunch of sugar eaters, I don't have to worry about getting many mosquito bites. They're going to go somewhere else. They can smell it. They can detect it. Right.
That I guess that's my problem. I'm just so sweet, the mosquitoes just
You're
naturally bite.
just too sweet. Right
That's
there.
right.
Yeah. So, I believe that to be true.
Looking to see if we've missed any questions, but I think we pretty well got the
Yeah.
questions covered.
So
I
about game birds, yeah. Her Tom is 3, okay, which doesn't make him old,
no, not
but
not if he's taken care of properly.
I would bet you that he's overweight.
Hmm.
And if you can hold him, I I would encourage you to pick him up, hold him, feel the pelvic bones in the back, and see if they're pointy or if they're rounded over. And for me, that's the easiest way to feel the fat, what the fat's doing.
Yeah,
So if they're softer, rounded over, feel like a Q-tip sort of, the only thing I can, you know, kind of give you an analogy, it would be like a Q-tip. So if they feel
yeah,
rounded over and soft like a Q-tip, he's carrying too much fat, right? When he's going to be prime, it's going to be a lot more pointy, like putting your finger up against the end of a ballpoint pen, not with the tip out, but with the tip retracted. It's going to be more firm like that. It's going to feel like there's a couple ballpoint pens in there. That's just the easiest way for me to describe it. I don't know if I did that justice or not, Rip, but that's about as good as I
That's a
could.
good one. That's a good
Yeah.
one.
So, um, same thing for the hens, right?
Hmm.
So, you want to check them as well. I'm not a fan of squeezing the abdomen area. I'm worried about injuring something, to check for internal fat. I
Yeah,
don't know how to do it.
I've seen some folks that were overactive squeezers. I'll just leave it at that. But
Yeah. I mean, the pad fat usually builds up right at the end of the sternum or the keel bone,
mhm.
you know. So what I would refer to as the upper end of the abdomen, but I don't know what I'm feeling for, right? So I'm not gonna. And you know what? If I pinch an intestine, if I pinch some other organ, I don't need to do any internal bruising. So I'm not comfortable doing it, right? If you are, I'm happy for you, but the way for me to tell is to feel the pelvic bones. They're usually a pretty good sign.
And that's a really easy thing to do. You pick up a bird, 9 times out of 10, you got him facing you, so you got two fingers right back there to feel the tip of those pubic
Yeah.
bone.
If you're holding them right, you have them
Yeah,
facing towards you.
yeah.
So,
I
yeah.
mean, you can do it in just a flash.
All right. It doesn't take long. They're
Mm.
right there. They're not hard to find, right? And you're not going to damage anything by feeling for them. So, and typically on a male, there'll only be about one finger of separation between the pelvic bones. Whereas hens, if they're good active layers, there'll be two minimum, three. And I've actually seen some hens that were such good layers, I could get almost four fingers between the
Hmm.
pelvic bones. It's rare to get four fingers, but
You don't come across many of them,
nah.
or I never have. Jeff, I got a question,
Okay.
and I've seen it come up from time to time on the different list. Is there any advantage to feeding breeding males separately on a different diet from the females? What's your thoughts?
Is there any? I mean, the males should be on a separate diet. For sure, you want a lower calcium and
Hmm.
you want a slightly lower energy level for the males. But I like to in a perfect world where somebody could do that, like I would move the amino acids around a little bit too, for the males to get some of my protein from that. For sure, I'm going to use a meat protein in there and get away from all plant-based proteins. Um, and I want to get those vitamin levels up so I get the most amount of semen out of that bird. Right, I want to get his vigor up both internally and externally. So when you turn him loose on the hens, he's only got one mission in mind, right? And he's getting the job done. So yeah, the males definitely. I mean, the big breeding companies have always had male diets and female diets,
Yeah.
and they still do. And they got special feeders that only the hen's head can fit in, right? And at a different height. And they got a feeder, they got another track feeder with the male diet in it, um, with a bigger opening, but it's up higher. So it's not as easy for the hen to reach. So,
That your comment brought something else to mind, and I agree with you on meat protein, animal protein, meat protein. And it's almost impossible to find an over the counter feed that has animal protein in it. What can somebody do if they're in that situation?
uh, I mean, they could buy in. Uh, I prefer fish meal, a good
Hmm.
quality fish meal, because look, it's wild caught, and it hasn't been fed a commercial diet, right? So that throws off those amino acids as well. So using a wild caught fish meal, if we really want to get grotesque about this, then you know, feeding roadkill, right? I mean, if a person was willing to get fresh roadkill and put hunks of meat in there for them to chew on, they're happy. Okay. It doesn't sound enticing. It doesn't sound pleasurable to watch, but a flock of chickens can clean up a deer carcass in a short bit of time,
Yeah.
right? And they'll do a good job of it. So,
I know years ago, there was a, a poultry man lived north of me a little bit, and he used to raise dark brown leghorns, and he liked to go fishing, and he would always try to catch a mess of mudfish, and he would bring them back and cook them up and toss them out there. Boy, those chickens went through those things like Sherman went through Georgia. I mean, they just ate it up.
yeah, that's. Um, Here's my funny story, and I think I've told it before, but not everybody got to hear it, right? I had a bad day of fishing, so I came back with a bucket full of minis, right? And I'm sitting out there. I take them out back. I was getting ready to put them on the compost pile. Well, I flipped one over the fence to in the chicken yard. Man, the chickens thought that was the greatest thing ever. Okay. That time we had buff Orpingtons. Okay. So that rooster, boy, he'd give out whatever the call or cackle was that he did, right? And the hens came over. So I put 4 dozen minnows over the fence for 4 buff Orpingtons, and they ate every one. Okay, they didn't waste it. So that minnow hit the ground, right? You know how a minnow kind of
Yeah.
wiggles once or twice. As soon as that minnow twitched, they were on it and didn't waste a bit of those minnows that day. So
I imagine not.
they had a good old time. So
Here's a question from David, and he said, "I see in some books about garlic is toxic in poultry. Is that true?"
okay, everything in this world is toxic to everything else in this world, right? So if you ate too much garlic, it's toxic to you. No, it's not true. Small amounts of garlic have great benefit to poultry when it's used correctly. So, um, it's all things in moderation and understanding what the tolerance level is. But yeah, no, I use garlic in a lot of animal feeds on a regular basis. It's excellent for repelling flies and other external insects. So yeah, I mean, you could add garlic powder to your poultry feed, and it would help out with like gnats in the summertime, mosquitoes that carry fowl pox and all that sort of stuff. So I would no, it's not a problem.
Here's to kind of back up what we're talking about. Radiant Ridge says, "My girls will do anything for salmon,
Oh
including
yeah,
getting out of the fence and getting stuck in a box trap meant for raccoons, all
yep,
for salmon."
yep, absolutely, no doubt about it. So
Well, I'm almost as bad myself.
Cabal Game Bird said, "Yep, he's rounded." So yeah, he's just carrying too much weight. So you're back to the salmon one.
Okay, let me
I
drop
had a
that
few
one.
others up there. Okay. Yes, you check the chicken. You check the weight on the chickens the same way, right? So I feel the pelvic bones. Figure out a way to put them on the scale and monitor their weights, and you know, keep track of it, right? And they'll tell you if they're heavy or they're not. Don't trust our hands. That doesn't really work that well. Just picking them up and thinking they're too heavy or they're too light. So, uh, but yeah, you feel the pelvic bones. That's a good indicator. Scales. Everybody, if you're going to be a breeder of any sort, whether it's for your own homestead or for show, having a set of scales, they're not that expensive. For under
Uh,
$20, you can order a set of digital scales from Amazon. Okay, so they're not, you know, they're just not that expensive. Um, Definitely worth having. So let's see. Better question. Would there be enough advantage to be worth the hassle? Is it more of a long term issue? No. I mean, as far as having two separate feeds, it's not. Is it's you can get by with a feed. Now, when you separate the males, I for sure would take them off the higher calcium feed that the layers are getting. I'd put them back on like a good 18% grower feed, and monitor the weight from there. You need to ration their diet, make them a little hungry. If you feel bad for them, then put a chunk of alfalfa hay in there for them to peck at, and that'll keep them satiated and occupied, so they don't get too grumpy. But no, for smaller flocks, it's definitely not worth the hassle. So,
Here's kind of a follow-up question along that line. Um, are the male slash female diets more for health or economics?
it's actually a combination, right? So the male diets, they feed them less. It's usually for the commercial broiler diets. So they feed them less, so they're in an optimum range for breeding for a longer period of time, and they don't get obese. So is it health? Somewhat. It's more economics than it is health, but just allowed to eat whatever they want whenever they want, and it does turn into a problem. They do get too fat too quick, and their breeding effectiveness. Now we're talking about commercial Cornish cross, but even less commercial breeders will, when they can, on a larger scale, they do this, right? On a smaller scale, the breeder flocks are not doing this. They all get one feed. So,
Sue posted a question. Well, kind of a question here. She said, I heard my local feed is going to add oregano into their feed. Thoughts?
yeah. And it's becoming more and more popular. Some of the bigger, um, like the Neutrina brand, some of the larger commercial, Kalmbach's been doing it. A small amount of oregano works really well in the later part of the gut or the later part of the digestive tract, um, fighting off E. coli, salmonella, a lot of those pathogens. So I mean they're kind of headed in a direction to correct a problem that they created anyway with their feed formulations, because most pelleted feeds move very slowly through the digestive tract, right? So the longer they sit in one place in that lower gut, or lower intestinal tract, the higher the possibility of E. coli's and salmonellas getting a chance to grow and thrive, right? So it all ties together. But I can tell you that oregano, whether being used in the water or in the feed, has shown positive benefits to gut health. That is 100% true statement. So,
Uh, I don't see anything else that we've missed. Well, wait a minute. Shows new comments here. Let me see what we got down here.
all right. Somebody wants to grow fathead minnows, sardines for his girls. Good idea. That's a great idea. And that's exactly what I had was fathead minnows. So, and my chickens loved them. Don't let them get too big though. Don't want them to choke on them. They will try to eat some things that are just a little too big. Let's
Serious
see.
kind of
Are
gluttons.
white leghorns not a social bird? White leghorns, that all the white leghorns that I have been around are not social birds. They're not really like hold 'em birds. They're not one that want to come up and cuddle. They're excellent egg layers, but they are not, my experience only, I have not met a social white leghorn. So, Rip,
But
you raised a whole bunch of them. So,
yeah, I raised leghorns but that you can say that same thing um, about most Mediterranean breeds. I mean, there's some variation. Minorcas are a little bit more calm, but they still got that innate go away and leave me alone, and I ain't participating in this mess.
yep, that's what
Thing
I've
about them.
seen. Yeah, they're just not social. Raw meat, raw meat is absolutely better than cooked meat. So,
Hmm.
yeah, um, for the chicken anyway. You choose what you like in the house, but let's see. What's Rob saying? Let's see. I've seen broiler breeder setups, and the males have an apparatus through the snares that keep them from mating. Yep, that's exactly what. In some of the older houses, yeah, they put something on the males so they can't even get in there to eat out of the female holes. So, yeah.
Kind of like an RFID chip or something like that.
No,
Hmm.
that's modern technology. Back in the day, they would actually put something on the male
Okay.
to make his head wide enough that he could not fit through the hole to feed. Right. So the one that I saw, see, they left the combs on the roosters, and
Hmm.
the hole was just small enough. But now an immature like cockerel coming in there could probably still sneak his head through there. Um, so they kind of look like blinders. I've seen old pictures of them, but they can adapt them, over the beak so that they can't get in there. But
It,
what else you got, boss?
I don't see anything else.
Okay.
But I would just, as you were talking about that, I was sitting here thinking that over the years, I've seen some really unique and innovative things that they've come up with to help manage poultry better. Um, but they're kind of getting away from that now, the old school way of doing things, and uh, going into something different here.
Well,
But
they used to have blinders that they could put on
oh
them.
yeah,
Yeah,
you can still
and
find those. As a matter of fact, Rob just says,
yeah,
excuse me, these were more like the blinders, how they attached, but were long and horizontal.
yeah. It just makes the roosters un less attractive though for the females. So I don't know. I yeah. I've
Well, but
seen a
all
lot of I've seen a lot of hens that if a rooster looks odd, like if he's been dubbed, depending on what
yeah,
his breed is or something like that, she
yeah.
has much. There's something about the natural comb of a rooster that a hen has an attraction to, and I'm not. I That's all the further I can go with that. I don't know, but they do seem to like the bigger the comb, the more attractive a rooster is. Did we miss any?
I don't think so, Jeff. I've been
Okay.
slowly trying to go back and forth just to make sure I didn't miss one, but I think we pretty well got them covered.
Yeah. Some
Um,
folks got some new chicks today. All right. Hopefully you're ready for them. So,
Watch our video on how to
um,
get your chicks off to a strong start. You'll be
yeah,
glad you did.
I think we got it all. We're at our hour, Rip. So,
Ooh, we are. How
yeah,
about that?
unless
I,
you got something else you wanna that's burning.
no, I'm good. Matter of fact, I wish I could say I planned it that way, but I'd be lying. But it worked out good.
Yeah.
Folks, we appreciate you joining us tonight. Jeff and I have had a good time. Honestly, I wasn't real sure how this new format was going to work, but it seems to have worked out very, very well. And we've had more viewers participating in this show than we have in some of our more recent live streams, and that is very encouraging. And don't forget, if you've got friends that raise chickens, Tell them about our live stream. Tell them they need to be here every other Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time to learn good stuff.
Absolutely.
Jeff, you got anything else?
No, sir.
All
I just
right.
hope everybody has a good time with their chickens. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, folks, y'all take care. You have a good 2 weeks. We'll be back in 2 weeks and we're going to have some more fun and education. We'll see you then. Take care.
See you later.